Welcome. This is the scientific method. Scientific method has 6 steps to it. Okay, there's 6 steps to the scientific method. So we're going to go ahead and outline those 6 steps right now. 6 steps. Okay. And you need to know all 6 of these steps. The first one is problem. There was always a problem that we're trying to solve. And in the scientific method, it is usually stated as a question. Okay, it's usually stated as a question. For example, how come my car will not start? That can be one type of problem that you encounter in the scientific method. Step 2 of the scientific method is the hypothesis. Okay, and the hypothesis is usually stated as an if-then statement. For example, if I do this, then this will happen. If, then statement. Okay? If I drive my car a lot, then eventually I will run out of gas. If then. That's a hypothesis. Okay? That's the second step. So first step is problem, second step is hypothesis. The third step of the scientific method is testing your hypothesis, and we call tests in science experiments. Experiment, or the test. We're going to test our hypothesis to see if it's true. We can test our hypothesis. If we drive our cars a lot, then we will eventually run out of gas. We can test that by continually driving our car, seeing if we eventually run out of gas. And the fourth step of the scientific method, step number 4, after you have tested, actually while you're testing, you're actually making observations. Observations. Okay? And when you're making observations, you're actually using your 5 senses. Okay, there are 5 senses, and those are sight, hearing, tasting, smelling, and feeling. Okay, those are the 5 senses that you are using in the scientific method. That's how you collect data. You see something, you are writing it down. That's data. You hear something, it's data. You taste something, that's data. You're learning something by seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, and feeling. Which leads us into the 5th part of the scientific method, and that is record your data. Okay? Anything that you see in your experiment, hear, taste, smell, or touch in your experiment, you're going to want to record that down. That's all data. And scientists are always using their data when they are talking about their hypothesis. You can prove a hypothesis wrong. Your hypothesis can be incorrect. It doesn't make you incorrect. Okay, so we record our data, and that helps us determine whether or not our hypothesis is correct or not. So we record our data down, and we're typically during this time we're making charts. Okay, we're making charts and graphs. I'm sure all of you have made those before. Charts and graphs. That's where we make our data, and we analyze. Analyzing occurs here. Okay, analyzing our data occurs right there. And the sixth and final step of the scientific method is conclusion. Okay, conclusion is, let me change colors here. Oops. Let's go blue. Is our hypothesis correct? That's the question we're answering here in the conclusion, is it correct? And that's a yes or a no, okay? And if it's yes, then you're done, essentially. If it's no, then I'm gonna go ahead and change colors again. I'll go red, okay? If it's no, right here, okay, how do we change the experiment? Okay, how do we change the experiment? Okay, so one hypothesis that's continually going on right now is a problem is how to cure cancer. You know, how do we cure cancer? Okay, and a hypothesis, it might be, you know, if people smoke, then they will get cancer. Okay, and you design an experiment around that, make observations, record data. Were we able to cure cancer? No. Okay, so how do we change the experiment, okay, in order to prove our hypothesis correct? We need to somehow prove it correct. Now, even if you prove your hypothesis wrong, you're still learning something. We just now need to turn that around and figure out how to prove the hypothesis correct. Okay, if your hypothesis is wrong, you're not wrong, you still learned something. We're just trying to prove it correct. You never really adjust anything to try to prove it correct. You have to design a whole new experiment to try to prove your hypothesis correct. So those are the 6 steps of the scientific method, and they actually make a wonderful, what we call an acronym: problem, hypothesis, experiment, observation, record your data, and conclusion. PHEORC. If you just remember PHEORC, P-H-E-O-R-C, then you know all the steps of the scientific method. Okay, let's head back into our scientific method, which, if you remember, it is P-H-E, okay, O-R-C. PHEORC, problem, hypothesis, experiment, observation, record data, and conclusion. Right now I'm going to talk about this one right here, observations. Let's talk about observations. Okay, observations are important. We make observations all the time. Okay, we observe how people interact with each other. We observe people driving too fast. We observe lots of things, and we use, remember here, we use our 5 senses. Okay, this is where we're using our 5 senses. Okay, seeing, hearing, touching, tasting, and smelling. Okay, we're using our 5 senses there. But there's 2 types of observations. Okay, 2 types. Oops, let's fix that there. 2 types. Okay, 2 types of observations. The first type is called a quantitative. Quantitative. This one here, okay, involves numbers. Okay, it involves numbers. So the first one involves numbers, and the second one is called qualitative. T-I-V-E. Qualitative. And qualitative involves qualities. Okay, qualities. For example, qualities like color, texture, shape, those are all qualities. They don't involve numbers. Okay? We don't count color. We can say something like 3 red blocks. Okay? There are 3 red blocks. Well, the number 3 right here automatically makes that observation a quantitative because 3 involves a number. That is a quantitative. Okay, it's a quantitative automatically. Okay, now if we just say the desk is smooth, okay, desk is smooth. Smooth here, okay, that's a quality. Okay, so that's a qualitative observation. Quantitative and qualitative observations, those are the only 2 types of observations you will make in using the scientific method. So the last thing that we need to talk about in the scientific method is the experiment portion. Okay, and what the experiment really is. Okay, when you're designing an experiment, you're going to have things that are called variables. Okay, variables. And there's 2 types of variables. Okay, there is the manipulated variable, okay, which is also known as the independent variable. Okay, the manipulated variable, manipulated variable, also known as the independent. There's also the responding variable, which is also known as the dependent. Okay, the dependent. Now what the manipulated variable is here, this guy right here, what the manipulated variable is, this is the thing that you as the scientist purposely change. Maybe you change the temperature, maybe you change how long a plant sits in the sun, maybe you change how much of a chemical you add to a mixture. Whatever it is, whatever you purposely change is known as the manipulated variable. Now the responding variable, this guy right here, this is what responds to what you changed. For example, if it gets really hot outside, the temperature changed, and maybe you put on shorts because of what happened, because the temperature got hot, you put on shorts. You putting on shorts is the responding variable. The temperature changing was the manipulated variable. Okay, so there's two of the main types. There is a third type, which is called controls, control variables. Okay. Now control variables, these guys here just stay the same. They don't change at all. You keep them the same as much as possible. You're helping control the experiment.